Welcome to Bodhi Unified Flow. Here, we simplify complexity and amplify performance. Today, we're diving deep into the fourth S of lean manufacturing. We're going to figure out exactly how to lock in operational excellence. If you've ever spent hours organizing a workspace, only to find it completely chaotic just a few weeks later, well, you're absolutely not alone. That cycle of cleaning and then immediately regressing, that's exactly what the Toyota production system sought to eliminate when they formalized the 5S methodology back in the 1950s. While the first three steps, sort, set in order, and shine, sure, they get all the visual glory of a workplace makeover, right? But it's this fourth step, standardize, or Seiketsu in Japanese, that actually determines whether your organization succeeds or fails in the long run. Let's explore how to create procedures so consistent, they literally become second nature. All right, here's our agenda for today's explainer. We'll start with the threat of organizational entropy, move on to Seiketsu as the procedural glue, then creating visual operating procedures, and finally, codifying success into daily routines. Before we begin, let's clearly outline what you will gain from this explainer session today. We're aiming to understand the threat of organizational entropy, define Seiketsu's role as the governor of the 5S system, learn to design visual standard operating procedures, and master the 3 steps to integrate these standards right into our daily routines. By the end of this, you're going to completely shift your perspective on what workplace organization actually means. Let's start with Section 1, the threat of organizational entropy, or the natural erosion of order. So without intervention, a pristine area naturally regresses into clutter and inefficiency. It's just a fact. We call this the threat of organizational entropy. Think of it like the laws of physics applied directly to business management. The entropy inherent in human systems inevitably leads to the erosion of order. And guess what it brings with it? Muda, the Japanese term for waste. Now, the primary objective of the entire 5S system is the elimination of muda. But eliminating waste once is very different from keeping it gone permanently. For example, when an operator has to walk across the factory floor just to find a misplaced tool, that's motion waste. When production halts because a workspace is simply too cluttered to process materials, that's waiting waste. 5S surfaces these abnormalities to reduce waste, but without standardizing, that muda just creeps right back in. Take a look at this quote. Without standardization, the workplace is subject to organizational entropy, where old, disorganized habits gradually return. It's the silent enemy that destroys the hard work of your initial workplace transformations. Honestly, you can spend thousands of dollars and hundreds of man-hours sorting out the junk, setting everything in its perfect place, and shining the equipment until it sparkles. But if you stop right there, you've really only achieved a temporary house-cleaning project. Entropy basically dictates that the disorganized habits of the past will slowly, quietly reclaim that space. To fight entropy, you absolutely need a governor. You need rules. Which brings us to Section 2, Seiketsu, the procedural glue. This is our solution right here. It's the vital connective tissue of lean manufacturing, the fourth pillar. We're transitioning now from the physical act of cleaning and organizing to the managerial act of sustaining. Seiketsu isn't just a housekeeping step, right? It's the infrastructure of consistency. It transitions your team from intermittent cleaning projects to a permanent state of high-performance operations. In fact, many experts refer to Seiketsu as the governor of the 5S system. Think of a governor on an engine. It limits and regulates the speed to keep it running optimally and safely. While Seiketsu does the exact same thing. It establishes the rules, the schedules, and the visual expectations that make the first 3 pillars repeatable and predictable. It's a state of cleanliness maintained through formal systems, not those heroic, sporadic weekend cleaning efforts. So standardization doesn't exist in a vacuum. It perfectly codifies the outcomes you achieved during sort, set in order, and shine. Look at how Seiketsu applies to sort on this table. Sorting uses a red tagging method for unneeded items, right? Standardizing that means we document exactly who can red tag an item, what details must be on the tag, and how often we hold disposal auctions. For set in order, we standardize by enforcing visual cues and floor markings so those defined locations never change. And for shine, Seiketsu transforms a simple cleaning session into systemic cleaning schedules and specific maintenance checks. It literally takes the action and turns it into a permanent rule. Moving on to Section 3, creating visual operating procedures. Okay, so how do we actually apply this theory to the floor? Well, the human brain processes visual information significantly faster than text. Traditional, dense manuals sitting on some manager's shelf add zero value, and let's be real, they're usually completely ignored. Visual standard operating procedures entirely flip this paradigm. They provide immediate, at-a-glance guidance right where the work happens. They're located right at the point of use. They use photographs of the ideal state, so an employee doesn't ever have to guess what clean means. They can see it perfectly represented right in front of them. By utilizing these specific visual management tools, any observer, even a complete outsider, can instantly recognize if a standard is being met or if an abnormality has occurred. Shadow boards are incredibly effective here. By painting the exact outline of a tool on a board, anyone can see from 20 feet away if a wrench or a drill is missing. It's brilliant. Color-coding zones, clear floor markings that dictate workflow and storage areas, and A3 summary sheets placed directly at the workstation, they all work perfectly together. They communicate the procedural standards loudly and clearly without a single word ever needing to be spoken. And that leads us right to Section 4, codifying success into routines. Knowing the tools is only half the battle, guys. We must institutionalize these expectations. If we don't weave them into the actual daily activities of our team, they become nothing more than nice decorations. The crucial point here is integration, methodically breaking down the mechanics into 3 inescapable daily steps. First, ambiguity is the absolute enemy of execution. You have to assign responsibilities clearly, like who is responsible for what zone. Second, these duties must be integrated into the daily routine, not just left for Friday afternoon when everyone is exhausted. And third, management must check for maintenance and compliance. You simply cannot expect what you do not inspect. See this number? The number 5. This represents the 5-minute 5S period scheduled at the start or end of each shift using job cycle charts. And let me tell you, this is a real game changer for process improvement. By looking at job cycle charts and carving out just 5 minutes dedicated solely to 5S chickens, you completely shift the organizational mindset. Organization is no longer viewed as an extra task or some annoying chore handed down by management. Instead, it becomes an integral, undeniable part of the actual job description. Because when 5-minute standards become part of the job rather than an extra task, maintaining the correct way requires zero extra cognitive effort from the worker. I want you to really think about that. The correct way should be the path of least resistance. If putting a tool back in the wrong place is actually harder than putting it in the right place because you have a brilliantly designed shadow board, then you've successfully standardized your environment. You have officially beaten organizational entropy. Finally, Section 5, Summary and References. As we wrap up this explainer, let's look at what we've achieved. We've traveled from understanding those invisible forces that degrade our workspaces to the highly tangible visual tools required to lock in continuous improvement. We've covered our agenda, ensuring you now possess the frameworks to prevent workplace entropy and amplify your operational performance. You know that to fight the forms of muda, you need Seiketsu acting as that procedural glue. You know that visual SOPs, shadow boards, and floor markings will always outperform dense manuals. And you understand that assigning roles, scheduling 5-minute integrated routines, and checking compliance are the absolute keys to sustaining these gains indefinitely. I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder as you return to your workstations. If your workplace regresses into disorder tomorrow, was the failure in your team's effort or in the clarity of your standard? Remember, true excellence isn't an act, it's a standard. When things fall apart, our first instinct is often to blame the personnel for a lack of effort. But through the lens of Seiketsu, we have to look in the mirror and ask, did we provide a visual, undeniable, and integrated standard? Make the correct way the easiest way, and your team will naturally achieve excellence. Thank you for joining Bodhi Unified Flow. Here are the references used to construct today's explainer for those who wish to continue their journey toward continuous improvement. We highly encourage you to review these materials to deepen your understanding of lean manufacturing. Until next time, keep simplifying complexity, standardize your success, and continue amplifying your performance.